Hello YouTube, this is Asatsu 5 and today I'm talking to you about this arrow point. This is my brother's arrow point, but he did not find it. In fact, interesting little side note, I believe in Texas it's illegal to go arrowhead hunting. I've always been told my whole life that in Texas, if you find an arrowhead, you're supposed to leave it on the ground and let archaeologists dig up the area and survey it, and it's supposed to be kind of a regulated thing. In complete contrast to that, arrowhead hunting is very deep in the Texas tradition. My uncle did it, or my uncle had a collection, but him and his friends did it. I know people who go arrowhead hunting or point hunting, and it's very much a Texas tradition. I'm sure other people in other states do it, but some people will be like, hey, let's go to the lake and go arrowhead hunting. When they're not fishing, arrowhead hunting is usually on the mind as well. So it is a thing, but my brother did not find this. My brother works at a prison, and one of the offenders was walking around the rec yard, or the recreation yard, and he found this. And he turned it in, rightfully so, because inmates are not supposed to have pointy things. And somehow my brother ended up with it, and he gave it to me to film a video on, and to talk about archery in general, I guess, and to show it off. But this is an interesting point to me. Keep in mind, I'm no expert, because it looks to be authentic to what a native Texan would have used. And what I mean by that, it doesn't look like a tourist trade arrowhead or arrow point. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you a generalized silhouette of a tourist trade point. And like I said, there's probably three scenarios how this ended up in the rec yard at the prison. One, it was a tourist trade point that just fell off someone's jewelry. This is the general silhouette. You have this kind of broad point with notches at the bottom. This is, very exaggerated, but this is kind of the basic silhouette of the tourist trade point that you find at Indian reservations and museums. And this looks nothing like it. It has a tang, not notches. So that it can't be it. How else could have this got into the prison? Well, there could have been a Native American offender, or a inmate who practiced bushcraft and primitive hunting technology, and they napped it for protection, which I don't think that's the point, because this is with your hands not going to cause a lot of damage. It needs a shaft to get proper penetration. And the third explanation of how this got to the rec yard in the prison is that this is an authentic artifact that either was laid or dropped at the prison by a native Texan, or it was brought in with the foundation of the rec yard if it was built up in some earth that was imported in to make that rec yard, which I don't think that's the case. But yeah, this is an interesting point. Literally, there was many different point configurations when it comes to Native American points. There were different heads for different jobs and different cultures and different tribes. One of my favorites is the Clovis, which is not a arrow point, it's a atlatl point. And but there's many different ones. You got board points, you got this, and board points are interesting because they were claimed to be used for hunting birds, but when they did DNA on them, they had like deer DNA on them. And there was an interesting video where this guy got board points and he shot at a deer carcass that was field dressed but not skinned, and he showed the penetration of it and its wound channel. And then he did the same thing with like shark's teeth and I think a bone point and a wood point. And he just kind of demonstrated primitive technology and how it worked against deer-sized game. It's a very interesting video. And I can't remember the name of it. I might have to put it in the description. But yeah, so this is, from what I've been able to gather, an authentic artifact. And this, like I said, in one of the takes, I've tried refilming this. This is a rock that my brother got in Arkansas. I'm using it for decoration. But it kind of is relevant because this is one of the rocks my brother picked up in Arkansas to sharpen his knife while he was camping or backpacking. He picked up 3 rocks for sharpening his knife, and this is the finest grit, and it's real smooth and beautiful and pleasant to look at. And he put this on his knife. He put his knife on this and attempted to sharpen with it. It seemed to work somewhat well to refine the edge, but I'm using it for decoration, and it's the stone tool, and that's kind of what this is about. But I thought I would take the time to explain the different hunting heads for archery, and to reference a relatively new technology in archery and why I think it is valid. But I've had an interest in hunting, archery hunting. I've hunted with a crossbow several times, was unsuccessful, didn't see anything, and I bought myself a recurve bow and a longbow to hunt with. I no longer have the recurve, but I have the longbow. You've seen it in video. Yeah, I think you've seen all 3 of my bows in video. But basically, when it comes to archery, you got your field point, which is that. You got your judo point, which the field point is what you use for target practice, especially when you're shooting at bags, archery bags. The judo point is actually used in hunting small game like squirrels and rabbits, mostly rabbits, but they also have bunny busters. But this is squirrels, rabbits, stuff, small game, and these teeth prevent excessive penetration, and also they refer to these as stump shooters or dandelion shooters. Where if you shoot this at a stump or at a rabbit and you miss, the grappling hooks grab the grass, and it keeps the bolt or arrowhead or arrow from digging into the ground, and it makes it a lot easier to find your arrow. So, it kind of prevents penetration. And this is the beginning of the hunting point, far as, the level of effectiveness and what you could use for hunting. You really don't use the field point for hunting. You could, but you really don't do it. And then you have the broadhead. This is a broadhead, and usually broadheads are called broadheads, and stone hunting points are called arrow points or arrowheads, or points in general. So this is a point, an arrow point, or arrowhead, and a broadhead is usually made out of metal of some sort. This is a cut on contact arrowhead, or broadhead, which is what I use. I don't use mechanicals. I like cut on contact. This is my favorite cut on contact. It's the Magnus Stinger, and the only reason why it is my favorite is because Ted Nugent endorsed it, and I was a fan of Ted Nugent, and he was kind of the guy that got me interested in bow hunting, and then I wanted to do traditional bow hunting, and this is kind of what I used when I hunted. But basically, the comparison that we're going to be doing is with this, and this. A lot of people are not big fans of the cheap shot because it's polymer and it's not necessarily razor sharp. I can do this, although with a new one I wouldn't do that. I've shot this one into a rib or a rack of ribs to show it busting through bone and penetrating and stuff. But most people feel comfortable hunting with this, which rightfully so. But there is a small group of hunters that use stone points. I don't personally know them, but I've seen people on TV and the internet hunt with stone points when it's legal. Not every state allows you to hunt with a stone point, and if you do hunt with a stone point, or even if it's not a stone point, if it's a broadhead, they have size requirements. Some states you can't hunt deer with border points, but other states you can hunt with border points. Some states will allow you to hunt with this or that. And basically what I wanted to point out is that this was a lethal projectile back in its day, and this shooting through a rack of ribs, busting through the bone, and still penetrating, not quite as deep as the broadhead, but comparable. People don't trust this for some reason. They think it's a novelty. And I will tell you that I do not believe that this is a novelty. In an ideal situation, like especially if I was hunting, dangerous game with a bow, I would want the metal thing because I want as much penetration as possible. But I just wanted to shout out the cheap shot from Cold Steel. This is the cheap shot because it does make a good wound channel, and it's cheap. That's why it's called the cheap shot. And really, this and this probably will serve similar roles. You can take down medium to large game with this, small game with this, but what's cool about these is that they're cheap, and they're not very well missed if you lose them. So like if you want to go, let's say, deer hunting with your crossbow, longbow, recurve bow, self bow, compound bow. If you want to go archery hunting for deer, and you take this with you, or you take this with you in case you see a rabbit or something, or maybe a bobcat, you can do that. You can hunt a rabbit with this while you're deer hunting, and if you lose it, it's no big deal. But you probably won't lose this because of the grappling hooks. But the same can be said with this, is that if you're hunting deer and you happen to see some other game animal that you don't want to risk losing a expensive broadhead, you can use this. And this is cheap. These are about $1 each. They sell them in 10, 20, 50 packs, I think. This is cheap. It has a wide wound channel, so you can hunt your deer with it, and you can hunt rabbits with it, and it's no big deal if you lose it. And that's what I think is cool about this. And we know this penetrates well. We know it busts through bone. So I just want to give a shout out to the cheap shot. I have a video demonstration of it. And I just want to point out that this has taken down, probably millions of game animals in its life, and not just small game, but large game. So really there's no real big difference between these. They're both not extremely sharp, but they penetrate, they cut, and they leave a real nasty wound channel. And I personally think the cheap shot's more effective than this one because it has a broader wound channel. But it's kind of just, hey, if this worked throughout human history until the white man came to North America, this should work. And the only reason why I say should is because I haven't personally shot an animal with it. I shot a rack of ribs, and that's pretty much it. But I've seen deer taken with this on the internet, and just don't dismiss it just because it's plastic. It's a relatively hard plastic, and I think it's on par, if not better, than the Stone Point. And I personally still like the Magna Stinger, but that's just kind of my little spiel on the cheap shot. I wanted to show off the Stone Point, and that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I'm a Satsu 5, and I'm out.